program. And thank you all for taking time out of your afternoon to be here. And this is Seth Wall's comprehensive project. He's doing a panel for his comprehensive project. So unlike most of you who are already done with your comprehensive project, Seth is just starting this. So the downside is he has a lot of work to do after this. And so I'm going to actually, Dr. Wayne Westbrook, who is Seth's chair, wanted to provide some opening comments. He is spending some time with his family. It's his grandmother's 90th birthday. So there's a big family reunion, so he asked me to share some opening thoughts. And Dr. Westbrook is a professor of political science and the director of the Master of Public Policy program. And here are his thoughts. The challenges facing institutions of higher education are well documented. At times, it seems much of the news is about higher ed is bad. We're all too familiar with the issues of concern, such as rising tuition, struggling endowments, higher loans of student debt, reduced support from state and federal legislatures, an erosion of public confidence in higher education, questions about the value of that education in an economy where graduates are not getting jobs. Consider too the environment of the college campus with diverse needs, expectations and demands from the various constituencies. There are many perspectives on each campus and no shortage of individual perspectives on what should be done and when it should be done. Alums, current students, faculty, staff, and administrators, and donors are some of the groups that have different opinions on what should be done and how it should be done. And in the middle of this maelstrom of institutional challenges and diverse stakeholders, the college president. The challenge of articulating a vision and that positions the institution not only survive the pitfalls of higher education, but to thrive in the environment. This all falls to the president. It's a wonder that anyone would want to actually be in this position, but there are few that do. And increasingly, these chief executives are becoming less from the traditional path of faculty members and academic vice presidents, and more from the boardroom and the world of politics. Seth Wall's research is fascinating to me. It explores in deep detail the skills and characteristics of the non-traditional president. His work will prove useful to candidates for presidencies, search committees, executive search organizations, and board of trustees in understanding those various characteristics that have contributed to the successful non-traditional college presidents. I've also found this work to be extremely timely and his contribution to literature to be overdue. There is no question in my mind that the trend among hiring committees will continue to rise in support of a non-traditional president. Seth's work helps us to understand why that is the case and provides insight for those groups in the evolution of the changing college presidency. I'd like to welcome Seth to moderate the panel entitled Presidential Leadership in Higher Education Since the Great Recession of 2008.
Thank you, Gavin. First, I'd like to thank President Perkins for allowing me to host this event in this wonderful place at the Simon Center. Thank you very much, President Perkins, for doing that and also being here as well. I really appreciate that. And Vice President Mark Wattman as well. Thank you for being here as well. I appreciate that. And then also in the audience, another person who's been a good mentor of mine and doctoral program process mentor specifically has been Tom Horgan, the president of the New Hampshire College and University Council. And he completed his doctoral degree this past May. So thank you for being here as well. Congratulations on now being Dr. Horgan. Before I introduce the panelists, I just want to talk a little bit about my dissertation and then this comprehensive project overview. As was mentioned in Wayne's comments, my dissertation is looking at non-traditional college and university presidents, piggybacking off Tom Horgan's work that he did, which was looking at the pipeline issues in the Northeast for non-traditional college and university presidents. I'm looking specifically at the characteristics of these non-traditional college and university presidents and interviewing people from around New England who are in these positions of president at colleges and universities. Some of those people I've interviewed are here today. One of them is Dr. Silvio Dupuy, who is second from your view on the left. And Carrie Healy, who's the former lieutenant governor of the state of Massachusetts, and she's now the president of Babson College. Dr. Michelle Perkins in the audience as well. I've interviewed her as well. Robert Baines, former mayor of Manchester and also former president of Chester College of New England. And my president, of course, where I work, for those of you who don't know, it's the Massachusetts College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences, now MCPHS University. Charles F. Monahan Jr., who is the consummate non-traditional president, holding a bachelor's degree and having his own chain of pharmacies in Worcester, and going and becoming a very successful president of a growing and very successful health science institution. So it's been a fascinating journey for me, and it's been great to be able to be surrounded by people and get to know new people in the process. And that brings me to my comprehensive project, which is, as was mentioned by Gavin, Presidential Leadership in Higher Education since the Great Recession of 2008. And Dr. Perkins alluded to some of the challenges when we were speaking just briefly before this panel discussion and dialogue, but it's not all doom and gloom. I think everybody comes in here with a frame of mind, thinking of recession, and there's a lot of negativity associated with that, but there are also a lot of opportunities. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about my overview here on the project. And the financial crisis of 2008 had a dramatic effect on the global economy, including higher education. Higher education has been impacted by many external factors since the start of the Great Recession. College and university leaders have had tremendous challenges and opportunities with the changing landscape of higher education nationally. The evolution of this educational climate has given institutions the opportunity to assess who the next generation of college and university presidents should be to best face these challenges. Here I have a panel of leading higher education, business, and political professionals who will offer insights into the state of local and national higher education presidential leadership at colleges and universities since the start of the Great Recession, and where are we going to go from here. And first I'd like to introduce Tom Horgan. I'm going to just introduce each one of them, talk a little bit about their backgrounds, and get right to the panel questions. So, I'm sorry.
I'm not a doctor.
Would you like to switch places? So,
But Tom, congratulations, Tom.
That Horgan,
you've been promoted to panelist.
That concludes our program.
That concludes our program. Thank you very much. Yes, Tom Raffio. Tom has been a good friend of mine and also a mentor personally and professionally for a number of years. And I'm fortunate to be on the board of Northeast Delta Dental. And Tom is the president and CEO of Northeast Delta Dental. He's the chairman of the New Hampshire Board of Education and is a member of the State Workforce Investment Board. He is chair of the New Hampshire Coalition for Business and Education, chairman of the Bow Schools Foundation, board member and former chairman of the board of the Early Learning New Hampshire, advisory council representative for the Concord area colleges, and advisory board member of New Hampshire Forum on the Future. Tom is also a member of the New Hampshire Scholars Leadership Board, where he serves as a champion. Next to Tom is another good friend of mine, Dr. Silvio Dupuy. And I can say a lot of things about you, Sil, but they're all good. So, Sil started his professional career as an optometrist in Manchester and is an alumnus of St. Anselm College and the Illinois College of Optometry. Dr. Dupuy was the first president of the Catholic Medical Center in Manchester, New Hampshire. He serves as an independent consultant to business and professions. He served as an interim president of Notre Dame College and served for 5 years as president of the New England College of Optometry. He currently serves as special assistant to the president for government and community relations for the Massachusetts College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences at the Manchester campus. Next is Connie Roy-Chakowski. Connie is VP of HR at Northeast Delta Dental, and she has been awarded HR Hero as well as the Outstanding Women in Business Award, and is a governance fellow with the National Association of Corporate Directors. She serves as a trustee of the Community College System of New Hampshire, on the board of directors for the YWCA New Hampshire, and the advisory council of the New Hampshire Department of Employment Security. Connie regularly mentors women in the workplace with leadership potential and has volunteered at New Hampshire's Women's Prison, teaching inmates job-finding skills as they prepare to re-enter society. So thank you all for being here today. I'd also like to make one more mention. She's not in the audience. Of course, most of you know that I always mention my children, but this time I'm mentioning my wife. The handouts that you all have, the content was me, but all the layout work and print work was due to my beautiful wife, Kim, who's the marketing director at UNH Manchester. So first, I'd like to...
Would you like to introduce Senator D'Alessandro first?
Oh, I'm sorry.
He's going to hold me in abeyance.
Yeah.
Just if needed.
Again, that concludes our panel. Finally, I'm sorry, Senator D'Alessandro. He's from Manchester and has been serving the people of District 20 for 8 terms. He's been the vice chair of the Ways and Means Committee and also sits on Finance and Capital Budget. He holds an honorary doctorate from Daniel Webster College, as well as honorary degrees from Franklin Pierce University and the New Hampshire Institute of Art. D'Alessandro has served as chairman of the New England Board of Higher Education, which is a congressionally authorized interstate compact designed to encourage cooperation among New England-based colleges and universities. Thank you. Now there's the panel. And my disclaimer is Tom is an expert at doing these panel sessions because I've been going to them for many years. This is my first go about, so I thank you all for your patience. Now I'd like to go to Tom Raffio and ask you for your opening comments.
Thank you, Seth. And I'll tell Kim, your wife, that you just got all excited after you mentioned her, so that's how you forgot the Senate. She'll like that. So, any event, I just want to thank you, Seth, for the opportunity, and thank you all to come here on a Thursday afternoon. I also want to really thank my esteemed panelists, because the Senator and Silvio and Connie get asked to appear a lot, as I do, and they always make that extra commitment to be out there, and I know what that takes, because when Connie and I finish up here today, we're going to go back to the office and work to catch up. So I just want to thank you all for those extra efforts. And I do want to thank Seth for the opportunity, because it gives me an opportunity as chair of the State Board of Education and a chair of the Business and Education Coalition to get out there, and based on that bio, you would not believe, but yes, I also do lead the company called Northeast Delta Dental. But I have a lot of fun in education. I think it's important for me just to take a step back in terms of my life. If you go back to my high school yearbook, it says that I wanted to be a teacher, and that's truly, I envisioned myself living in a small house on a campus, teaching, because I love to teach and mentor. And it didn't quite work out that way. I ended up landing a job at a large insurance company in Boston, and one of the things that I learned almost immediately, I got thrust into a leadership position, is that the best leaders are those that mentor to coach. I learned that almost immediately back in the late 70s and early 80s. So I stayed in the business field, but my whole approach has been basically one of being a teacher within business. And I went to Harvard, which is totally traditional. They were the ones really that developed the Carnegie unit to this day. And my good pal Fred Bramante says, you got to go back there at your reunion and tell them to get rid of the Carnegie unit. It's not about seat time, it's about competency. So we know all this. So I actually, at my 35th Harvard reunion, I actually have started a little group down there to try to do that. So I was at a very traditional university with all the pomp and circumstance. I then though went to get my MBA at Babson College, and as Seth mentioned, they have a former Lieutenant Governor, Dr. Kerry Healy, is now the president, but to some extent it's really not new. When I was finishing up my MBA there, the evenings in 1998, they actually hired a gentleman by the name of Bill Glavin, who was actually a Xerox executive. So I think the economic challenges that occurred in 2008 have definitely expedited sort of the non-traditional role as non-traditional presidents in the university and college system, but it goes way back. And I just remembered from Bill Glavin at Babson that he was a Baldrige expert for Xerox Corporation, and at that point Xerox was a huge corporation and was leading the way in a lot of innovation. And I just remembered what he brought to Babson College was that type of business innovation in the classroom, and his theory was that you can't teach Baldrige in the classroom, Baldrige quality and that type of quality systems if you're not actually practicing it, as the university themselves. So all of that discipline was brought not only into the classroom, but also in terms of how they ran the college. So when Seth asked me to participate in this panel, I thought it was great, and I do agree with him that this has all been expedited by the economic issues since 2008. But some universities really have been practicing this sort of innovative, leadership for many years. And I just think back to my years at Babson College. I was also happy that this topic did not include the Common Core and charter schools, so thank you, Seth, for saving me on that. I do spend a lot of time as chair of the State Board of Education. But he also mentioned I'm also chair of the Business and Education Coalition. I'm also involved a lot with early learning New Hampshire and the Scholars Program and so forth. So I've always kind of taken a holistic view. I've always viewed that if you take care of toddlers between 0 and 4, everything else will take care of itself. So my whole sort of mantra has always been this holistic view of education. And the folks that lead education have to really model that type of holistic behavior in order to teach it. Now we in New Hampshire, the State Board of Ed has done a great job, and my predecessors, so I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about prior boards and the current board, of coming up with standards that are really, really flexible. But one of our major concerns is that it's fine to have high school standards, for example, that allow all this extended learning opportunities and real life learning opportunities, but if that's not being taught in the colleges and universities, then it's going to be hard to really introduce it. I mean, education can no longer be, well, we're different, than business. So in the State Board of Education, there are a set of standards called the 600 series, which is what you may not know this, but the State Board is responsible for reviewing the programs at universities and colleges, and we're taking a great deal of effort to review what the curriculum and what is being taught at colleges and universities in terms of teacher preparation. It's one thing to say you have the standards in high school, but if the teachers aren't being trained properly at the college and university level, then it just simply is not going to happen. So I've been fortunate. I have this holistic view, and I try to introduce that. Now, in terms of non-traditional leaders at colleges and universities, in a lot of respects, any leader, whether it's of an insurance company, whether it's of a factory, no money, no mission. You can have the greatest organizational mission, and I think, for example, at Northeast Delta Dental, we do spreading oral health. And as you all know, the mouth is part of the body, and you can't have good oral health, good overall health without good oral health. But if we weren't making enough money to spread that mission, it wouldn't matter. So while certainly organizational mission is important, it's really incumbent upon the leaders of our colleges and universities to make sure that there is sustainability. So it doesn't surprise me that there's a higher and higher percentage of leaders of colleges and universities who are non-traditional, because if the college isn't sustaining itself, it really doesn't matter, what the mission is. And it's also important that the university, today's universities, presidents, and we're fortunate in New Hampshire to have a lot, such as Michelle, having a lot of great leaders. You really do have to walk the talk. You really do, and demonstrate to students, demonstrate to the business community that you want to be out there, that you can do the fundraising needed. You can work with businesses as well. And that's the second trend, and then I will turn it back over to Seth, that I wanted to mention is when I go to a lot of meetings, as Tom knows, the other Tom knows, and it used to be that I would go to meetings with business leaders and they would say, my God, I can't, the college graduates these days, they don't have the science, technology, engineering, and math. They don't have this. They don't have the teamwork skills. They don't have the analytical skills. They don't have the communication skills. And they would just grouse amongst themselves. And then I would have my education hat on, and the teachers and college presidents and high school principals would say, I just don't know what businesses want. I'm not sure what I should be doing. So this Business and Education Coalition that Seth mentioned gathers folks like Michelle, folks like Tom Horgan, along with a ton of other business leaders and policymakers, and we're hashing out these issues. And so it's great for me to see finally that there's a communication between the educational system and the business world, because for years those two were in silos, and it was so frustrating for me to go from one meeting to another where the business leaders would lament that they weren't getting qualified candidates, and educational leaders would lament they didn't know what the business leaders want. So I am totally optimistic about the future. I see students in my line of work, and with my educational hat, I see young employees at our company, and Connie will get into the employer's perspectives, so I don't want to take the wind out of her sail, but there are some incredibly talented young people out there, and I think we as leaders of colleges and university and as business leaders, we just really have to be that mentor for all of these emerging leaders. And we as leaders have to deal with reality. And I think that's what I've enjoyed seeing in the non-traditional leaders is take the reality, discuss the reality amongst your employee colleagues, and then deal with it. So in my case, as an insurance company executive, the Affordable Care Act for us actually wasn't a great thing, but instead of grousing about it, we turned it into a positive, and we got ourselves certified on the public exchanges, we created a private exchange, and now there are thousands of individuals in New Hampshire heretofore did not have dental coverage, now do. So we took the Jim Collins approach and dealt with the reality. We turned what could have been a huge negative in our company, which is basically was a business-to-business model, and now more and more it's business-to-consumer. And if those of you understand this, business-to-consumer, B2C, is completely different than business-to-business. But we looked at that as an opportunity, and it's totally transformed the creativity in our company. We've gotten some really creative people. We do funny things like Northeast Delta Dental Stadium and advertisements on the sides of trailer trucks and so forth, but it's been a fun exercise. So that's the type of facing the reality that the non-traditional presidents like Michelle are facing with in terms of dealing with the new economic reality, but you can turn that economic reality into a real positive. And so I will close with that I'm really optimistic, and again, whether you're a leader or a college or a university, or a leader of business or a leader of a not-for-profit, you have to lead by example, you have to be a mentor, and you have to deal with those types of realities. And thank you, Seth, for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom. Really appreciate it. I'd like to go now to Connie for her comments.
Hi, everybody. I have to say that I've had the privilege of working in an environment where I get to go to the Tom Raffio School of Leadership, and sometimes it's hard to define what a good leader is, and it's almost easier to comment after you've experienced it. And good communication skills, great presentation skills, and the ability to listen to people really plays heavily, I think, in terms of good leaders. I also never worked, although Dr. Dupuy and I worked for the same organization. He was long gone by the time I got there, but I heard people, and this was at the city of Manchester after he left as mayor, and for years after, people would say, I wonder what Sil Dupuy would do about this. And to me, that illustrates great leadership. And I asked people, what was it about him that made him so great? Because I knew him when he was our family optometrist. So when you're a kid, you don't really look for or understand leadership. But I would say to people, what made a difference? And people would say he really listened to people. He didn't sit behind a desk. He came out and talked to us and listened to what our needs were and then addressed those needs. So again, not always easy to say proactively what you're looking for, but after you've experienced it, you can certainly comment on, what an impression good leaders have made. So as I'm not here to talk about Northeast Delta Dental, but I could launch into a half-hour presentation about that. So if you ever need that on your, let me know. What I'm here to talk about, I've been a trustee of the community college system in New Hampshire for about the last 12 years. And besides the day job, it's my second job, I feel like. I chair its governance committee. I've served on a number of committees, including currently I serve on the audit committee and the safety and risk management committee. It's been a great experience, and I've seen a huge evolution in terms of how community colleges are perceived and how they are led and what the changes have been in the last several years. So first I'm going to give you a little bit of background on the community college system, because the trustees, we just had a meeting this morning and we talked about how important it is for people to understand what the community college system represents in New Hampshire. And probably you've heard some of this from Matt Wood already, who I'm sure does the same kind of commercial that I do, but we've become the most cost-effective, accessible way for New Hampshire students to get a high-quality educational experience, whether they're looking for a 2-year degree program or they're looking to go ahead to a 4-year degree. We have 7 colleges throughout the state, and we represent the entire state. And we also have 3 academic centers, one in Keene, one in Rochester, and one in Littleton. So we offer the 2-year associate degree programs and then certificate programs that are typically achieved in 1 year. We also do workforce training, and we have dual enrollment programs to engage New Hampshire high school students in the college experience early on and actually qualify for credits at a very reasonable cost. So before they even show up at a college, they have earned college credit. We've engaged a lot of the New Hampshire the high school teaching community in that Running Start program. About a third of our students transfer to 4-year colleges every year. And in terms of metrics, we always have a hard time putting our hands around or getting our heads around what is success in terms of community college. We graduate about 2,000 students a year throughout the system. So is that success? Is success starting a 2-year program and then graduating exactly 2 years later? For us, probably not, because a lot of our students have a 3-year experience or a 4-year experience or a 5-year experience. 40% of our students are over 24 years of age. And so these are working people. These are people who need to enhance their skills, to stay with the kinds of skills that their employers are looking for in their workplaces. So our students are not traditional students. Some of our students are students who are the first to even go to college in their families. And so they're not coming from a background where education is pushed or even considered in many cases because the money's not there. So, over 75% of our students are there because they're getting some kind of financial aid. So it's really, it's an important economic engine for New Hampshire. It is really, 95% of our students are from New Hampshire. So we're doing a lot, I believe, for the businesses and the future of the state. We hope that 95% of the students who are from New Hampshire actually stay in New Hampshire after they graduate, so that they'll continue to fuel our businesses with the kind of talent that our businesses need. But a very, very vital and important system in New Hampshire. The cost, a lot of students are delaying their entry into a four-year college because they can't afford it. So they're coming to community college either for the first year, you know, living at home, coming to community college for the first year, and then sometimes the second year, and then moving on to a four-year experience. We have agreements. We just announced an agreement yesterday with, or earlier this week, between Great Bay Community College and UNH, where students are guaranteed, if they maintain a certain grade point average, they are guaranteed a place at UNH. So there are a lot of, we're keeping in touch with the high schools, we're keeping in touch with the four-year colleges, and then, important for us, keeping in touch with each other. It used to be, when I first went on the board of the community college system, it seemed that there were regions. So if you were in Manchester, well, and you saw a course in Concord you wanted to take, or a course in Laconia, well, but this is Manchester, this is where the border ends. And more over the years, we've recognized how important it is, and particularly with online education, the importance of sharing resources. We don't have unlimited resources. We have found that more and more our leaders of our organization need to access different sources of revenue. It can't only be about the tuition you charge, particularly if your students don't always have the money to pay, and you can't rely on state funds. So not different than the leadership in nonprofits. Our leaders are having to think about new ways to generate revenues in our system. So one of the things I did, Seth mentioned the recession, the 2008 recession, and how different things are today than they were before the recession. Well, actually, a recession is good for community colleges in that we see an uptick in the number of students coming back to school. People lose their jobs, they recognize the need for new skills, they may have a severance package from the job they lost, or through other partnerships, they're able to access funds to attend community college. But it's almost a giant wake-up call that they're needing something a little bit different. So we see an increase in the number of students that come to community college during a recession. Post-recession, currently we're seeing, we've been growing, and I think we've been doing a way better job of marketing the services and the products we provide, not only to employers, but schools throughout the state. But we've seen, we saw a 2.5% enrollment increase last year. And this year, so far, it's pretty flat. One of the things we are seeing is an increase in the amount of online education that's happening throughout the system. So one of the things I did when I was thinking about this topic is there are people that are in the system that are far smarter than I am and understand leadership in community colleges far more than I do. So I called Ross Gittell, our chancellor, and I said, Ross, what are you looking for in terms of a president now? What do you need? What's different? And what he said was, his 2 cents is that community college presidents need more finance, management, and data analysis skills than they currently have. I think all community colleges would benefit from operating more like a business. So back to your non-traditional, does non-traditional work? Well, I think what he's saying is yes. With the bottom line being student success, but with greater financial discipline. This requires strong finance and administrative skills and analytical skills to understand the institutional data, measure performance, and hold people accountable for student success and financial outcomes. I also asked the vice chancellor of the system, interestingly enough, Ron Ryu, had a long career in the banking industry. And he was invited to become a trustee of the community college system a few years ago. And when Ross came on and we were looking for a vice chancellor, Ron had skills that we all very much, skills and knowledge, particularly in the area of finance, that we all felt was an enhancement to some of the ways, some of the lenses we were looking at in terms of our success. So Ron not only was interim president at 2 colleges, he was interim president at River Valley while we looked for a permanent replacement to a president who had left, and he did the same job for the Manchester Community College. Here's a guy that retired, and now he's really not retired at all because he's vice chancellor of the system. So combined with an academic, Ross, who had been at UNH with a long career in the academic world, and then take somebody who came from business, I think we have a great, great blend of the kind of leadership we need in terms of the job we're doing at community college level. I also asked many of the presidents, what can somebody with a traditional, or should we be picking leaders with a very traditional background to lead our community college system? And I don't mean system, I mean colleges, because again, we have 7 colleges, we have 7 presidents. Many of our current presidents said something, very different. Higher education is a unique business with unique personnel issues, regulations. As a result, I think it would be difficult for somebody with no academic experience to be a successful leader at any college. So that was one of our presidents at one of the colleges. Another one said, yes, absolutely, non-traditional works. This is a relationship business. If you can understand student needs, talk with faculty, industry partners, you can be successful. This is a collegial enterprise, and that's where the business types might encounter some problems, although I've seen it work. On the other hand, an academic might not have the skills or interest to build the relationships with industry and the larger community, nor might they have the skill or passion to do the fundraising. It takes a certain skill set where one is balancing many diverse and sometimes opposing priorities. It's also a lonely job, and this is one where I think it doesn't matter if you're in college or in business. It's a lonely job since you are the boss, you're expected to lead. It's a job that is not for any person, and very few should do. One of the reasons I think coaches do very well these days in their coaching business and are quite busy is that very reason. It's lonely at the top. And leaders of organizations need someone to talk to, and they don't always have that. You're likely not to go to the people always that you work with for the advice that you might need to better lead the organization. Another person said, an external person will always feel the tension of they really don't understand from the faculty. And yes, one can be successful, but needs a very large patience pill as change is slow in education in comparison to the external world. Another person said it's about the depth of belief in the mission and ability to secure funding and lead faculty. It's easier to hit the ground running if you come up the traditional path, but I believe after a year or so, the non-traditional folks catch up. So some good insights from some of the current leaders. Although one of the things I read that probably I've been thinking about quite a bit in the last few days, if you get the Harvard Business Review, there was a really good article in the Harvard Business Review in the June issue, and it talked about talent spotting, 21st century talent spotting. And it said, potential now trumps brains, experience, and competencies, which I thought was really, for somebody who's in the HR business and looking for talent and involved in the selection process quite often, I thought this really resonated with me. I think this is so true. The first indicator of potential we look for is the right kind of motivation, a fierce commitment to excel in the pursuit of unselfish goals. So it doesn't matter the organization, but motivation to do that and matters. The others are curiosity, insight, engagement, and determination. So I would urge people who are looking for leaders, no matter what organization, and maybe in particular education, to look for some of those qualities. And I'll stop there to let other people have an opportunity to say their 2 cents.
Thank you.
Seth.
Thank you, Connie, for your comments. And thank you also for inquiring with the presidents as well. I appreciate you talking to them and Ross as well. Fantastic. Dr. Dupuy, I'd like to go to you next.
Well, I am in total agreement with everything that was just said. I can turn it over to Luke. I am happy to be here and happy to be always with Tom. And he keeps thinking that I'm a mentor, but that works both ways. And he couldn't do that, but I can give you a little plug for his book. There I know, Do-Overs. It's a great book. It's written by Tom, along with Dave Collins of the Boston Celtics and
Barbara McLaughlin.
And it's not a novel. It's a book. If you've got a particular problem, you look at a chapter to say, what would you do about this? So I urge you to get a copy of the book. And to Connie, I would say, obviously my services as your optometrist work well, because you're a person who has a lot of vision and who sees very clearly the world out there. And of course, with Senator Wood Alessandro, we're closer to the same age, we're closer to contemporaries. And I think I've been following his career since I was in high school. So we have a lot of good relationships here. And of course, with Seth was in the mayor's office with Bob Baines when I first got involved with the Mass College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences, and he was there as the chief of staff, and he was very instrumental when I needed to see Bob to kind of sneak me in for a few minutes and not make me wait 5 or 6 weeks. So I'm grateful for that. I've been around for a long time, and just a short time ago I went to a major function of the Chamber of Commerce, and I hadn't been for a while, and as I was walking down the aisle, one lady nudged her husband and said, "See, I told you he wasn't dead." Well, I'm not dead, and I'm here, and it's very difficult to know where to start. So maybe a little bit about background. It's difficult for me to contain myself to that 2008 period because most of my experience has been before that. When Seth and I were talking about, and people are using expressions today, and there are always a lot of good expressions, like thinking outside the box. And I think that my career and my life has been more concerned about making the box larger rather than thinking outside the box and being more inclusive and involving people in decisions and in the decision-making process. And if I give you a little bit of my history, it's not out of ego or conceit, but it's the fact that I have been not only a non-traditional college president, but a kind of a non-traditional guy all the way through. We were talking before with one of your students and talking about the Franco-American ethic back in my community. And my folks immigrated from Canada, and Catholic Medical Center was actually built over the apartment building where they lived and where they met in the city of Manchester. So I go back a long time. But what would happen is that the oldest son was going to be a priest. That was preordained. And the second son was going to be a physician because that's what they like. By the way, they didn't like lawyers because they didn't like, French people didn't like lawyers. But the third best thing was going to be a dentist, and I almost fell into that dental track. I woke up one morning as a freshman at St. SL College, and I said, do I want to get up every morning for the rest of my life and hurt people, inadvertently, but hurt them, and have my hands in their mouths for 8 hours a day? That was my conception of dentistry. So I looked around, and fortunately, I was working in a place in Manchester where half of it was an optical shop and the other half was a flower shop, Charlotte Floors on Kelly Street. I read a book about optometry and optics, and I said, perfect, I will still be a doctor. But I won't have night calls, and I won't kill anybody, and my patients will come back every 2 years for a new pair of glasses. So if you want to know about career guidance, that's how I became an optometrist. And since that time, I've said to people who sometimes want to discuss things with me, I will say to them, why are you discussing that with me? Don't you know that I am a man of vision? So enough of that. But I am a non-traditional non-traditional because I did go into optometry and I had a wonderful career. I practiced for 17 years and was very happy doing that. But I also got involved in my community, was not always satisfied with the way things were going in the community. And the next thing you know, I came home one night on a Thursday, I remember, and told my wife, I'd just been to a meeting and I was going to run for mayor. And she said, excuse me? I said, yeah, I'm going to run for mayor and I'm going to announce next Tuesday. And she said, you can't do that. I said, why not? I said, well, it's going to take me at least until next Thursday to get clothes for the kids so we can go to your announcement. So she didn't like politics very well, but she was supportive. But I was elected, and I was kind of elected by a landslide, 264 votes out of 38,000 cast. So every person that I met after the election said they had voted for me. And I knew that about 50% of them were not telling the truth. I only met 2 people, Senator Lou, who hadn't voted for me, and they lived in Bedford. That's what I had voted for. But anyway, I had a wonderful career, and really, from there, I went to become the first president and CEO of Catholic Medical Center, which is a merger of what was then Sacred Heart and Notre Dame. And that doesn't make any difference here, but that was the French and the Irish in Manchester, and that was a whole story unto itself. But that was non-traditional, and no optometrist ever would have been elected to be the president and CEO of a hospital. Optometrists were doctors, but were not MDs, did not practice in the hospital, did not have privileges. So that to me was the first big non-traditional step. And I've always said is that from that point on, nobody ever asked me whether I had a master's or a bachelor's degree, or they said, well, if he was the mayor of Manchester, he must be okay if he could do that. So I did that for 10 years, had a very successful merger, and then I was asked to be Commissioner of Health and Human Services for the state of New Hampshire. And I can tell you again that no optometrist would have been asked to be chairman of the Department of Health and Human Services. But it came from experience, and it came always from being non-traditional, because I went from Catholic Medical Center to being Commissioner of Health and Human Services, and that's when I wound up in Boston as the president of the New England College of Optometry. And you would say, well, that was traditional. You were going back to your profession. But I had not been a faculty member. I had not been on the board. I had not had any experience with the college except struggling to get by and graduate from the New England College of Optometry. So bottom line is, I went from there, went back to Catholic Medical Center, became insurance commissioner for the state of New Hampshire, and that's where I first met Tom, left there, and went to be the executive director of an 80-person law firm with offices in Manchester and Concord and Portsmouth and Boston. And that's the non-traditional part. And it doesn't make any difference whether it's 1978 or 2008 or 1940s. That I want to talk to you a little bit about the principles of leadership. And the issue of leadership is really quite simple. And you say, well, how can you transfer from one set of skills to another set of skills? The name may change and the mission may change, but what needs to happen is always the same. And I was fortunate enough to get selected to go to Harvard Business School, to go to the Kennedy School for senior government executives. I was there for 3 weeks, and I came home with 12 loose leaves of material and information, but I left there with 3 words. That's values, capacity, and support. And no matter what organization I've been in, no matter what leadership skills you talk about, no matter what you try to lead, is that you've got to start when you go in by establishing the values that that organization is going to hold dear. And as you establish values for the organization, you build support. You build support for the organization, and obviously as you build support, you build capacity. So no matter what organization I work with, I've always started not in the middle with problem solving and analyzing and what went wrong. And I always say to my folks when I go in, let's ban the bazookas. You don't know what bazookas are today, they're rocket launchers, but they're really the same thing. Is that it's not about criticizing and finding all of the things that we've done wrong. It's like start and take a step forward. And I've been fortunate or not fortunate, I don't know which, but to go into organizations where there was chaos and where people are heading in a lot of different directions and they're all well intended, but there is no sense of what the mission really is. So you need from go to chaos, and then you need to go to alignment, where people are pulling in the same direction. And a lot of organizations stop at alignment. They never get to enrollment. And enrollment is where I say is that I understand you, I support the mission, and I'm willing to work towards that mission. And that's when organizations get done. And I have to tell you that no matter what it was, is that when I went to the Department of Health and Human Services, is that large organization, billion-plus budget, 7,500 employees, and there was really chaos because they had a lot of reorganization. So what we did was we went away, and the senior team, we spent 5 days together talking about what was the department, and we decided that our job was to serve the public interest, pretty broad, but to serve the public interest and to serve populations that are in need. And once you understand that, then you structure your department, you structure your organization to meet those goals. The other part of that is always the same. Recently, I heard Bob Weil, who is the Senior Vice President for Oracle, which is one of the largest international corporations. He said, there are 3 things that I'm going to leave you with. He said, the first one is cash, and cash, and cash, and cash. He said, if you do not have the resources to run the organization, it doesn't make any difference how finely tuned the organization is, it cannot achieve its objectives. It was Theodore Hesburgh who said, he was the president of the University of Notre Dame at one point, vision without resources is hallucination. Vision without resources. So bottom line is, whether it's in the 21st century or the 19th, the principles never change. And whether you call him or her a traditional or a non-traditional leader, if they do not follow the mandate of having a clear vision, of enrolling people who work there in that vision, it's not going to work. At one time it was called total quality management. Those of you who are 35 or so understand total quality management. We, when I was at Catholic Medical Center, reduced it to just a little line. It said, total quality management plus total quality people will give you total quality results. And then we spent our time defining what's total quality management. It's management that sets clear objectives, that lets the organization know where it is and where it wants to go, and has milestones and an ability to deliver on that promise. And total quality people is you hire the best people, you pay them well, you compensate them well, you keep them informed, you communicate with them. The leader must communicate his passion or her passion to the organization, because leadership is about passion and leadership is about belief. No one can lead if people won't be led. That you have to develop that sense. So traditional, non-traditional, I think why today people are looking at non-traditional is that money is tighter and finances are tighter, and they look to the business sector and to people who have been successful. If I had a suggestion to make about your project and comments to make about your project, it would be the fact that faculty needs to spend more time on management issues. And that as we provide educational opportunities and sabbaticals for our faculty, as our faculty moves forward towards management and administration, that there should be a mandate that they take courses in finance and in management and communications and skill sets that will allow them to lead. My sense when I was at the New England College of Optometry was not that the college was here and administration and finance and the faculty was in their own silo, is that there has to be a cross-current. And what the non-traditional president frequently brings is that idea that in his or her business or his or her industry, people have not worked in silos, but there's been this cross-pollination. So if I had a suggestion, I would say that it's not whether presidents are traditional or non-traditional, it's what they bring And if you want more academics to move forward and to come through the system and become college presidents, then give them the opportunity to learn the other skills that go well beyond the issue of faculty. So with that, I have a lot more story that I could regale you with, but you know enough. But I'm a non-traditional guy. The impact that the recession had on me was it made me go back to work, because when I 401k, I used to wake up in the morning, it was a 101k rather than a 401k. So I had to find a way to make a living to help support my 5 kids, 13 grandchildren, and now 4 great-grandchildren. So we have a busy time. Thank you for the opportunity. I hope I had what I said was helpful. Michelle, it's always nice to see you.
Thank you, sir.
And Tom Morgan.
Sil, you left out one additional family member, your adopted son, Seth Wall, by the way. So you've got to add me in there as well as my extended family that goes along with it. So, but thank you for your heartfelt comments. I really do appreciate you being here today. And next, I'd like to have Senator D'Alessandro make some comments.
Thank you, Seth, and Tom, Sil, Connie. Great job. I'm going to be a little bit more practical. I'm going to try to get 3 points across to you. The first is the economic and political situation that exists in this country today, which has a dramatic effect on how the business of education is conducted. Secondly, I'm going to talk to you about my ideas of leadership and give you a case study of a traditional versus a non-traditional leader and where success and failure developed, one in each instance. And the third thing I'm going to try to bring forward is what's the future hold? You know, it's tough to be a forecaster, but I think the future is something we all should be thinking about. And I think the future will be predicated by what happens in 2014 in the general elections. And then we look forward to what happens in 2016 when we'll have a dramatic change at the top. And Dave Cowens is a good friend of mine, and just to give you anecdotally something that happened. When Dave was playing, he became player coach of the Celtics. Great player, just magnificent player. So Dave and I were talking one day about what coaching was like. And he said, Lou, it's lonely at the top. And there's a great player whose ability certainly spoke for itself. But when you're trying to guide 4 other players and also manage the operation, it's lonely at the top. Let me say that convincingly and emphatically. It is lonely at the top. Let's talk about the economics of today. What are the economics of today like? 2014, on this day in August. I think people are not aware of the inflationary situation that exists in this country. I think inflation is creeping up rapidly, which means the ability of your dollar to buy is diminished considerably. We were at the supermarket last week. An apple costs $1. An orange costs $1. You buy 12 apples, that's 12 bucks out of your food budget. Think about that. Something that we haven't considered because it isn't considered in the inflationary index. The economy is moving slowly. The last report said the GMP increased by 4%. I don't believe it. I just don't believe it. The costs associated with the cost of living have increased dramatically. I don't think wages have increased that dramatically. I think your purchasing power has diminished rather than increased. I think the economy looks as if it will continue to move slowly. Why is it moving so slowly? It's moving so slowly because we have a government that's totally inactive. Totally inactive, doing nothing. Nothing has happened at the national level. You have a president who can't get anything done. You have a Congress that can't agree on anything. You have a Senate that can't agree on anything. Nothing happens. They went on vacation, last week. Well, went on vacation, with many, many things to consider. How about the budget? How about sequester? We're all dealing with it because it has a dramatic effect on our ability to function. Those across-the-board cuts are dramatic. The state of New Hampshire depends upon federal funds. About 1/3 of our operating budget is federal money. We have about $11 billion biennial budget. Think of that. 1/3 of it is dependent upon dollars from the federal government. If you reduce the federal government's gift by 10%, you've got to adjust your operating budget by 10%. I think it's dramatic. So the economy plays a significant role. Our leadership at the top is non-existent. That's a terrible, terrible statement to make. But it's true. We have a Congress that doesn't operate. We have a president who's stymied, has to govern by executive order. We have a House of Representatives that has just passed a motion to sue the president because of his inactivity to incorporate every aspect of the Affordable Care Act. What does that say about leadership? It doesn't exist. And that's very, very, very poor in terms of our vision of where this country's moving. So economically, problems. Politically, it's clear we have problems. Those problems have got to be rectified. We don't have the parliamentary system where a vote of no confidence could be asked for and we could change the government. Can't do that. That's not our system. Just met with a group of Canadians. We were at a conference in Baltimore. When the government is inactive and not working, a vote of no confidence occurs, and you change the government. You change it so that you can get action, you can get activity, and you can get the government moving in the proper direction. So from an economic standpoint, I see problems. I see problems ahead. From a political standpoint, could we have a change like the change that occurred in 2010? We had a significant recession. It began in 28. What happened? The winds of change swept across the country, and a group of people got elected to public office who said, government doesn't work. Why should we have government? And they were hell-bent on eliminating government. In New Hampshire, the election of 2010 produced a budget that was so bad, it'll take us 10 years to recover. We had negative leadership, in my opinion. What will happen in 2014? Does that attitude persist? Is that attitude going to be pervasive in 2014? The Tea Party is a functioning entity. It functioned in New Hampshire. Will it function in 2014? So politically, that's how I see the landscape. From a leadership standpoint, who will emerge? And how will that person emerge to lead at the post-secondary level and at the political level? Many post-secondary education institutions have chosen to move out of the traditional sector and choose a different type of leader. The University of Oklahoma chose a senator, a U.S. senator, to lead the university. They thought that his skills, both his political skills, his relationships, which Sil talked about, were the key ingredients to taking that university and bringing them a step forward. Has that pattern been followed throughout the country? I think many institutions which were hell-bent to have a PhD with an academic background as the president of the university have changed course. They are looking for vibrant leadership. They're looking for the ability to fundraise, which is a significant part of the presidential acumen. And these decisions are made and will be made. Average life of a college president is 5 years. So you see things are moving, and they're moving in what we hope is a positive direction. The college president has to deal with the faculty. Not an easy situation. I've been a college president twice. I've been vice president of a university once. It's no piece of cake. Al Sil says you got to bring them together. You got to bring them to the point where we're all moving in the right direction. One of the real criticisms of faculty is they don't teach anymore. Now, if you don't teach, then how are you going to get the kind of knowledge you have to the students who are sitting in those seats? It takes 5 years to graduate from a 4-year institution. I think that's the average time. It takes 6 years sometimes. I did a study of how long it took to graduate from our state university. The average length of time is 4.5 years. Next, 5, 5.5, 6. Well, if you need a college that's affordable and accessible, and you're staying for an elongated period of time, that cost differential is significant. And if you look at the statistic, New Hampshire students graduate with one of the highest debt loads in the country. Well, the highest debt loads in the country. That's problematic. So the leader has to bring the faculty together, has to move the students in the proper direction, and has to do this at the same time that leader is out raising funds for the institution, making sure that all of the physical amenities that students need today are available. You know, it isn't like when I was at the University of New Hampshire, where my room charge was $150 a semester because I lived in a one-room wooden barracks that was constructed by the United States Army for World War I and kept for World War II. It was called East-West Hall. Now, it served its purpose. I had a bed to sleep in, a desk to study at, and we had gang showers at the end of the hall. Try to sell that one to students today. Okay? You're in deep, deep trouble. So the leader has to do all of these things and make sure that they happen on time and on budget. Big, big, big problem. I see many institutions going out into the private sector and looking for that quote-unquote business approach. Well, I think that has some pluses, but it also has some minuses. I think one of the most successful presidential searches that I can remember here in New Hampshire was when Walter Peterson was chosen to be president of Franklin Pierce. Had an institution that was on the decline because it was a relatively new institution. But Walter came, balanced the budget for the 20 years that he was president of the university, and did the kinds of things that most presidents don't think about. Found out the name of every student. Every student that was enrolled, he knew their name. Made a conscious attempt to meet with them, bring them into the office. Worked with the faculty. That was not easy, but worked with the faculty. Raised money on the outside because he brought a spirit to the institution and a presence that was bigger than life. That's a tall order to follow. Madam President, that's a tall order to follow. And I know it. You've done a great job here at New England College. I might say that I was executive assistant to the president here at New England College. I even served as president here for a very short period of time. The president has taken on a humongous task and has done a very, very creditable job, and she should be commended for that. Good example of leadership in our time at an institution that needs that kind of leadership because of the position it has in the post-secondary education market. Now, as chairman of the New England Board of Higher Education, I had two aims when I was chairman of the board. College-ready students, students who were ready to go to college, and access and affordability to that post-secondary level. We have a program called the Apple program, where if a discipline is not offered in your state, and it's offered in one of the other New England states, at one of the 270 public institutions, that's community colleges and the university system, and you're accepted, you go for 150% of the in-state tuition. The students in the 20th Senate District saved $750,000 in tuition costs last year by accessing the Apple program. It's a great program. A lot of people don't know much about it. It's there, it's been there for almost 60 years. It provides for affordability, and that's a key element. So the leader accepts a tremendous amount of responsibility, and the leader, it's 24/7. You don't take any breaks. You have to be available 24/7, and I can tell you it is a Herculean task, and the task gets more difficult. It's more difficult all the time. The whole program was built on federal aid. You know, the Pell Grant, which was called the Basic Economic Opportunity Grant, when it was first put together, was to provide the base upon which you built the financial well-being of the student as they moved forward. Well, the Pell Grant, it maxes out at $5,000. Basic educational costs at most private universities in the $40,000 range. So with a $5,000 base, that means you got to find $35,000 to fill. Now, many of our institutions provide institutional aid, but you can only provide so much of that. So things like the New England Board of Higher Education are providing opportunities. We have to do more. I think we know that we have to do more. At the state level, we fund our university system at about $100 million for the biennium. The university level, it's a multi-billion-dollar business. Multi-billion-dollar business. The state pays all capital expenses for the university. That means we, the state of New Hampshire, through its operating budget, builds all of the buildings. We own all of the buildings at all of the campuses, at the community college system as well as the university system. Well, that's billions of dollars worth of investment. And if you take a look at the capital budget and you take a look at the 20-year situation of paying those things off, again, it comes from the general fund. So that's how I see leadership. It's a tough racket. And the case study that I wanted to give you is an Ivy League college went away from its system of going to the scholars and chose the chairman of the board of trustees to become president of the institution. Had great experience in business, very successful in the business program. Lasted about 4 years before he was driven out. Driven out for many reasons. But because he was a non-academic, I think was the principal reason. On the other hand, you have an individual who comes in like Dr. Kemeny, who was the human being who discovered or created the language BASIC. Comes in, great scholarly approach, has enormous success, and the game moves on. I think timing is everything in this life. If you're at the right time, the right place, you have every chance to succeed. If you're the wrong person at the wrong time, your chances of success are de minimis. What do I think about the future? Which I think, Seth, is something that you're pondering. I think the future holds a tremendous number of challenges. Tremendous number of challenges. Good leaders are going to have to come forward, and they're going to have to present themselves to the public at large. I'm talking about both politically and academically. And they're going to have to be innovative. They're going to have to be creative. They're going to have to be risk takers. And they're going to have to, as Sil pointed out, I think, so eloquently, it's got to be a shared effort. Everybody has to buy into the game. Everyone has to be a player. Everyone must be considered a player. And if you get total buy-in, then I think the world moves in a very positive direction, and it will move strongly and swiftly in a positive direction. But there are many challenges, many challenges facing us. And then, as Sil pointed out, cash, 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 those are three challenges that we're going to face. I look at the revenue stream for our state. In the last fiscal year, we closed fiscal year 14. We raised $3.1 million more than we had anticipated. But we have an executive order that does not allow you to hire. There's no out-of-state travel. And you have to hold the line on spending. So all of those things play into the game. So the future will be what we can make it. But I think we're going to have to be bold, we're going to have to be innovative, we're going to have to be creative, and we're going to have to accept challenges. You know, we're going to have to be risk takers. I've taken risks all of my life, it's turned out pretty good. But the risks are going to be there. I applaud people who are willing to take those risks. So with that, Seth, that's my conclusion as to where we're going and how we're going to get there. And I appreciate all of you coming. I appreciate my colleagues on the panel for their insights. And let's hope that together we can make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lou, for your powerful and honest comments. I really appreciate your perspective. Just looking at the time, we are getting a little short on time, but I just wanted to pull together a couple of the common themes before opening it up to the guests in the audience for questions. And just going back to cash. My background is in business and finance. I worked in the mutual fund industry and accounting in Boston and in other parts of Massachusetts before being in municipal government and chief of staff in charge of budgetary and organizational affairs for Manchester, and now in the administrative position that I'm in with MCPHS University. So, hearing your comments, there's a lot of commonality when you're talking about vision without resources is hallucination. So, we can see that as evidence in what we read in the Chronicle of Higher Education almost daily, if not multiple times a day. Tom, your comments about taking a holistic view to the approach of education and the connection to business, I think, is tremendous. It makes a lot of sense. It just goes to show you the interdependency of higher education on K through 12 in the state of New Hampshire and the country overall, but in the state of New Hampshire specifically to your comments, as well as to business, Sil and Connie, the business sectors, as well as government, the interdependency on government and the impact decisions that are made there have on the educational systems. I was speaking with Nikki earlier today about some of the governmental decisions that have been made the past few years and the impact on the K through 12 system, and it's been dramatic, as we've also seen in higher education. So there are definitely some common themes there. And in terms of leadership, looking at the relationships, I think that's an important thing. Just looking at the panelists here at the table, the relationships that they have, everybody has their own niche. Connie with her HR expertise, her interpersonal expertise, her ability to look at governance issues and board composition, and that plays really well into her role with the community college system for the state of New Hampshire. Sil, with his varied non-traditional background, he's been able to take his skills and really fit into just about every aspect of the state of New Hampshire that there is. If there was a Mr. New Hampshire, you would be it. Senator Del Sandro, timing really is everything when it comes to these leaders. And it could be a non-academic, a non-traditional person coming in. They could be very successful, but if the timing isn't right, if the will of the people within the organization isn't with them, then they can fail. Or they can be an academician. It really is, timing is everything. What's the board looking for? What is the faculty looking for as well? Plugging your book, Tom, one more time that Sil plugged. In business, the long tradition of connecting sports analogies to business and business leadership. And Tom's book is a fascinating, quick read. It's called There Are No Do-Overs. It's available online at Amazon.com. This is a true plug for you now, Tom, but it's $9.99. and it's a great read, not only from a business perspective, but also a higher education perspective. And I've read it and I've applied it to my work on the board of Northeast Delta Dental, but I can apply that to my work as well at MCPHS University. So I encourage you to either check it out on Amazon.com or at Barnes & Nobles as well. And just a quick comment from you, Tom, if I could, about There Are No Do-Overs in leadership. Can you just make some quick analogies or examples of sports and business and sports and education?
Will do. First of all, you can see why Sil has been my mentor. You can see why Delta Dental is so great because of Connie, not me necessarily. And you can see we have great leadership at the State House with Senator Delsim, so thank you. So first of all, since Lou knows Dave Cowens, I think he knows this as well. Dave was a Hall of Fame basketball player, but he's equally great as a human being, so I just want to mention that, and it's a long story how we hooked up, but he's a great human being, and the connection, the title, There Are No Do-Overs, I just want to make one comment that I always make is we all make mistakes, and so we're all, in fact, we at Delta, we call ourselves a learning organization, so we learn by making mistakes and growing. But there are certain huge policy decisions that you don't get a second opportunity, and thus there are no do-overs. So the one for us most recently was making the decision to engage the Affordable Care Act, getting on the exchange. Sister Delta companies across the country that decided not to put the oral health coverage on the exchange are lost now. So we didn't have a second chance. And in terms of a basketball analogy, when Red Auerbach drafted Dave as the #4 player in the country back in the early 70s, if he hadn't made that choice, the Celtics had fallen into disrepair. They had won 11 out of 13 championships, but then Bill Russell retired. They went into disrepair. So Red wanted to turn around the Celtics really quickly. So he made that draft, and had he not done that, the Celtics would have been mediocre for several more years. Instead, they won 2 more championships in the 70s, in 74 and 76. And then Red again, being very non-traditional, drafted Larry Bird as a junior in college, but you can't do that now. So he waited a whole year to let Larry play the senior year at Indiana State. And then, of course, the Celtics won 3 championships in the 80s. So the premise is that there are certain key decisions that you make, whether it's in academia, whether it's in business, whether it's in sports, where you don't get that second opportunity. However, along the way, of course, we all make mistakes and learn and grow from it. The one thing that Dave and I both agree on is the values. Still mention them, that he trusted his teammates and communication. My favorite quote, the way the book works is we have a couple of paragraphs in Dave's words, and then we apply the business principle. The one that I really engaged with Dave on was on communication, that even in a tight-knit organization like Northeast Delta Dental, like the Celtics, you still have to work at communication. We all know this. World War I started over a miscommunication, and so much of leadership is defining the reality and making sure every person in the institution knows what's going on so they feel a part of it. Our employees know exactly what's going on in the boardroom and what's going on in the mailroom. And so if you if you do read the book, go right to chapter 8, because that was the ultimate key. And whether it's a school, you know, whether it's business, whether it's a sports team, communication has to be number one, and it has to be worked at, as Coach K said in one of the quotes. Even in a tight-knit organization, communication still has to be really worked at.
Great. Thank you very much, Tom.
Thanks.
I'd like to open this up to the panelists as well as to the audience. If the audience has any questions they'd like to ask the panelists, and if the panelists have any other comments after listening to each other, make your comments if you'd like to say anything as well. Dr. Henning.
So I'll be honest, I've always had a bias that the president should be an academic. I started in higher education for 20 years. Now as a faculty member, I no longer have that bias. And the reason is, I think I've always assumed that academics had leadership qualities. But now being a faculty member for a couple of years, I realized that being a faculty member requires a total different set of skills. And also the skills that a leader needs are not necessarily tested in faculty life. And also in most institutions, the promotion and tenure process do not support those types of skills. It really is about individuality, being for research-wide institutions, being the only author or the lead author on research. And it's about service, which is usually service to the institution, but not necessarily bigger service. And so it's interesting, the more I reflect on this, that those faculty members wouldn't necessarily have those skills, because that's not why they're going into faculty positions, and there's no way to really develop them. But with that, so for me, it's not necessarily are they traditional or non-traditional. The individuals have the skills to be the leader. And I think some faculty members, and we have many faculty members that have been excellent presidents, say, yeah, but that may not necessarily be the what they learn and why they want to go into that position. Whereas people that come from business and politics, that's why they go into those fields, and that's what they get tested on. That's what they need to do in their position. So it almost seems more logical now. So I have to say, I no longer have that bias.
Well, a number of universities share that particular situation as we speak. I mean, think of General Eisenhower being appointed president of Columbia University. What academic background did General Dwight Eisenhower have? How about Woodrow Wilson being appointed president of Princeton University? Now, those are pretty deep in the past, but think of the, I guess the risk. Well, Columbia obviously had a strong base, but still it was a risk appointing Eisenhower as the president of the university. And I think of Walter Peterson being appointed president of Franklin Pierce. You know, the timing was exactly right for that kind of an individual. There are universities who have to have the academic. I understand that. But at least consider the other opportunities because they're for the good of the order.
I think it's up to the board of trustees to realize what are the skills and knowledge and experience we need in a leader, not necessarily how do they rise up through the ranks. That may be more to think about rather than assuming that it has to be.
And I think in today's world, that's a process that really has to be in place. It's got to be practical.
Having an open mind about it. And it goes back, again, I mentioned Collins, having the right people on the right seats on the bus. And that's, you know, every position. And someone from traditional, if they have that skill set, it would certainly work. One of the other things from the research in my book, it's the people that know how to connect with people and willing to do the hard work. Every leader that I interviewed, whether it was an academic leader, sports leader, or business leader, said what separated herself or himself was outworking the competition. So if that's this, and we heard how difficult it is and challenging it is to be a university president, that would be one skill set that I'd be looking at. Does the leader want to do the necessary hard work and connect with people? And those are two things that are in your control. You may not be able to control what your IQ is, but in terms of hard work and connecting with people, we can all do that, but you would have to test that out in the interview process.
Thank you. Connie, and then Sue.
I was just going to say that good leadership is really hard to find, whether it be in business or at the college level. So I think that the future, I expect will be looking for great leadership, and it won't matter. But looking for the qualities that you need to lead the organization. And, you know, I'm in the recruiting business, and no matter what you're looking to be led, whether it's, you know, right now we have a position we're trying to fill to lead our sales team, and whatever position you're looking to fill, recruiting today is very different than it was 10 years ago. There are not a huge number of people in the pipeline who are qualified to lead. And so I'm a little concerned about that, and I think that we maybe haven't done as good a job mentoring the leaders that should be coming up behind us. So I think with the number of baby boomers who are going to be retiring in the next 5 years, there's going to be a huge gap. You know, we say in HR, and we've said in the last few years, the talent wars are coming, and the talent wars have begun. So, you know, we're competing against other great organizations for the same talent. So I think we need to rethink how we bring people up and test those skills. Recently, I went to a conference or a workshop on mentoring, and one of the things I really hadn't thought about in terms of mentoring is it's not only teaching somebody and sharing your own values and giving them books to read and advice and all of that. Mentoring really is about putting people in positions early to test those skills, so they have an opportunity to learn them experientially. And sometimes we don't do that enough. We're afraid that they might fail, and therefore, you know, that'll hurt our organizations. But putting people in a position to be able to do that and giving them the understanding, the support necessary if they don't quite hit it right, but they're on their way, I think is important for organizations to think about in the future.
Thanks, Connie. Sil?
My dad was a very wise man, and I admired him greatly. But he was a very simple guy. He told me a few things about life early on, and one of them was that life was a political process, and that when there was more than one person in a room, there was always a political process going on, because you were either trying to move me to your position or vice versa. And from a leadership perspective, I think you have to understand that. When I talk to younger groups and do a little mentoring, I remind them about what I now call Arthur's rules. He told me, if you don't lie, you'll never have to remember anything. He said, if you don't say it, you won't have to take it back. He said, don't ever get into an argument with somebody that buys ink by the barrel, and you might know who I'm talking about. Say that. And finally he said to me, and to me that's what life is about, and I will share it with you. He said, the golden rule is not treating people the way you want to be treated. The golden rule is treating people the way they want to be treated. And your mission in life should be is how do you serve other people. And if you spend your life trying to figure out what other people need from you, whether you're the president or the mayor or the doctor, then you will be successful. And those were his successful points. I call them Arthur's rules. And if you think back on them, they're pretty simple, but they work.
Thank you very much, Sil. We're pretty much out of time, but I'll take one more question if there is another one out there. Otherwise, I'd like to invite you all. President Perkins has been kind enough to host a small reception in the pub behind us here. But I'd like to invite you all to that and to interact and network with our esteemed panelists and guests. And I'd like to thank you, Tom, Sil, Connie, and Senator D'Alessandro as well. And again, thank you, Michelle Perkins, for allowing me to utilize this space, and Dr. Henning for helping me with this process. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, sir.